Well, good afternoon. I think it's afternoon, isn't it? Just. And a big welcome to you all. So, this is podcast 6, Truth and Revelations. And we have a very exciting, well, they're all exciting, aren't they? But really excited today because this week we had the US elections. Why should that be such a big thing over here in the UK? You will discover today, hopefully. And so I'd like to introduce, of course, the lovely Paula, my co host, and we have Susan Stansfield. Hello, Susan.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Now, I met Susan, we've just talked about it 3 years ago. In fact, I only met her once, but she left a lasting impression on me. And we met in a pub called The Crown. So when we first went into lockdown, there wasn't many places we could go, was there? For people who thought maybe a little bit differently to everybody else. And that's where we went. And Susan is Canadian, married to a British guy, and she had literally just left Canada because they felt like they had to for their own safety. So more about that later. So yeah, today we're primarily going to be just having a chat about the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's happened this week, personally, and also discuss how perhaps we could do things differently, how we could look at things differently. I'm talking about myself and everybody here, because what we don't want to happen, like what happened when the vaccination rollout came out. We all three of us here had a different perspective of a lot of people, but there was a massive divide, and that just lowers vibration. We don't want that. And so, yeah, without further ado, I really just want to talk about initially what happened when Trump got elected this week. Now, it's been building up. Oh, seems like forever, doesn't it? They do take a long time in the elections to the US, but it's a big deal. Why is it a big deal for Europe? Why is it a big deal for the UK? Because literally, whoever gets in to the White House does affect the rest of the world. And hence why a lot of the things that have happened in America has had a huge, and I mean huge, impact on the rest of the world. So I've been talking for a little while now, but I would like to say more about that. But let's go on to Paula on what
Hmm.
you think about Trump getting in this week.
I know that the changes that will come will be for the better, but I know as well that not everyone understands that to be the case. And I shared a post the other day. I'm going to read it to you because I think it's really important that this is where I stand. I'm not
Mm.
going to get deeply into the politics of this, purely because um I don't necessarily think that I'm the best person to talk about that. But what I'm going to talk about is the venom that I've seen online. And I want to say that someone shared this with me, and it holds so much resonance because of what I see. It's like we've gone back in time to 3 years ago when there was so much conflict and so much divide, like you've said, Jackie. And I don't want to see that happen. I saw families fall apart during those times, and it feels like it's happening again. And that is the worst thing that we could allow this to do. So my only comment is this: don't let politics bring out who you have been hiding. I'll never lose a friend over politics, but I will end relationships over bad behavior and horrible morals. And I am seeing sides of people, no matter what your opinion on Trump being elected, it was done democratically. It is what it is, and we have to move forward from that. I am seeing sides of people that I really dislike. And is that the real them, or is that them in fear? I think a lot of it is fear for things that they don't necessarily understand. A lot of people are conditioned by our mainstream media, and I'd say 99.99% of that mainstream media is manipulated in some way. And we don't see the truth. So that's kind of my take on things. I'm being very sort of diplomatic, shall we say, in terms of what my opinion is. I'm very pleased with the outcome, and I think there's going to be some hugely positive changes. Trump isn't necessarily someone that I would have in my friend group, shall we say, because some of the ways that he puts himself across are not the ways I would express myself. However, I also know that a lot of that has been manipulated. So don't believe everything that you see. Question. Again, I say this every episode, question everything. But
Yeah.
that's how I stand for things at the moment.
Wow, yeah, good points there. So many good points. And yes, I have seen divides. I've seen characteristics in people that I didn't expect.
No.
But I think it is because of fear and how passionately they feel about this. And I'm going to say something. 7 years ago, when Trump was president,
Yeah.
I probably felt the same because I didn't know what I know today. And, he just comes across sometimes as a bit of an idiot sometimes. And, but what I've learned over the last 7 years has been like a fast track.
Yeah.
I've learned
Rabbit
more in
hole.
more in 7 years than I have it in the whole of my life.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful for that. But I think, like you said, doesn't matter our opinion about it at the moment because there's nothing we can do about it.
Is it
So
as
why
well?
call out and
Absolutely.
why, let's deep dive. Let's question everything. And that includes us, doesn't it? Because obviously I have an opinion, but I have to question everything because I have learned that. And I teach my son all the time. I say, question everything, including me. I wish I hadn't said that, but
Yeah.
now he only questions me.
My kids are the same.
Yeah.
Do, do,
So, yeah, Susan, tell us what you
yeah.
think.
Um, well, my experience, I guess, is so different because I was living in Canada. We border the States in 2020. Watch that whole thing. I always knew that Trump would be a good, positive force purely because he didn't come from the Washington establishment.
Yeah. Good point.
Forever. I just always knew I'm a TV producer. He came from television and property. So I always knew he was going to be some sort of good spanner in the works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any of the vitriol because I got rid of all that 4 years
Mm.
ago. I only see the positive. Like my world is so full of positive vibes. I was the person in Canada and one of probably the first people that started the protests against COVID in April 2020. And I was laughing with my husband the other day because I said, okay, all the friends that I didn't lose during 2020 because I called fraud on the pandemic,
Yeah.
if I was living in Canada now and going, yay, Donald Trump got in, I would probably lose the rest of the friends,
Yeah.
right? And it's amazing to me how powerful the propaganda is over people. Because, like I said, I'm a TV producer.
Yeah.
So I don't take anything like for the truth, what I see, any kind of video, even independent sort of stuff. I know that it has a power to influence thought. That's because I'm a trained television producer.
Mm.
So I'm always just out in the public dealing with real people and, living the real facts and the real policies. I think it's extremely exciting because Trump's about to pick his cabinet. And I
Mm.
want to find out who's going to be Secretary of State, who's going to be Treasury, Homeland Security, Education, Health. I don't know if Bobby's going to be the head of health, but it's funny that you say that. And I'll finish with this. I got into this whole sort of, I call it health justice. I had a t-shirt company called Health Justice because of Bobby Kennedy in
Oh,
2000.
wow.
Yeah, in 2018, 19, I just got onto social media and I came across a woman named Zen Honeycutt in Southern California, who was a very popular and growing health justice advocate because her children had been hit with some glyphosate on a holiday. And she was connected with Bobby. And so I got inspired to speak out against health injustice in 2019 because of Bobby. And my friends in Vancouver and Canada, they work with him. They're on his Canadian, division of children's health and everything. So I've been connected to what he's been doing since before COVID. And specifically the corruption of the pharmaceutical industry. Yeah. So I researched that for about 18 months before COVID. And so even though Trump was the president, when that all hit, I was completely primed to know that everything we were seeing was fraud and that the election, stolen or whatever you want to call it, was just the military complex finally controlling America the way they've controlled foreign nations for so long. They were finally turning their weapons on the American people. And hopefully we're free from that now with this new election. So I think it's brilliant and exciting. I worry about the Brits who don't understand how controlling the American economy and empire is now in this country. And you may want to talk to somebody about this as a guest. I listened to this podcast guy. One of the main reasons we have problems here is because these huge American corporations who are coming here to receive tax-free status. And so they're all shirking on paying taxes. And so the British economy now is becoming majorly hindered because these corporations aren't paying taxes in. And so we're suffering.
Look at where we're going, the country. I mean, and no one can deny that our country, the UK, at the moment is in an absolute state. Things are kind of scary. And when you look at it from that broader point of view, Susan, it makes complete sense.
Well, if you look at the numbers, this is what I do, right? You look at actually the fiscal numbers, and I'll find you some guests to talk to about loss of tax revenue since the Americans started coming here. And that's why they're coming here. Like, that's why the Waltons bought Asda, Walmart bought Asda. I'm sure that was a tax deal, right? And then they sold it. So they're just buying in and flipping constantly to save billions, hundreds of millions. And it's bringing the British economy down. And they will be controlling major industries. And the one that I work in, sadly, I can see it. The Americans are starting to control the television industry here, which means they will control the story and the values of what British people see coming into their living room. And that's really scary when one culture takes over another culture and pushes it through the television. So it's a very concerning time here. It's exciting. I love Britain and stuff, but there's a lot of economic changes going on that a lot of people aren't aware of that are connected to American empire.
In terms of independence from that, then, Susan, what would you say, like the television and the media side of things? Would you say that there is any channel or any kind of TV company that would be more independent, or would you say that they're all going the same way?
Well, the big ones have been bought. So, for example, the company that created the Queen or the Crown, in Holborn, and the company that produced Downton, they were both bought by American studios. So the Americans buy the biggest stuff, right? They're not going to buy the smallest stuff. Channel 4, BBC, public broadcasting, so that's somewhat safe. Anything that's big and lucrative, and in television in particular, that is connected to large audiences, that's what's going to get purchased because that's where the money is.
And this is so interesting because
the audiences.
Because what they're then in a position to start producing is our content, which we consume, which has an impact on our views and thoughts and belief systems. And yes.
Yeah, and an example of this, and I don't mean to bring race into it, but you kind of have to. The British reaction to Black people being cast in Bridgerton is very different than the American reaction, right? The Americans are like, oh, well, fair, and it's casting, and there's Black people in Bridgerton. And the old British culture is like, what the hell are they doing casting Black people in Bridgerton? Because there were no Black people in that society at that time during the Regency era. So it's being forced on the British people, this cultural change. And I know because I'm Canadian and I grew up with this forced cultural American culture into Canada starting in the 1970s and 80s. And I always say to people, I'm Canadian, but I grew up American, because we were just Americanized 1970s and 80s big time. And it's happening here now, even it's so far away. And the main reason why the Americans are doing this is London and the capital markets is the gateway for the biggest consumer market of all, which is London to Shanghai. So that's what, 5.5, 6 billion people. That's what the American corporations are after now. America's nothing. Canada's 40 million people. America's only 350 million. From London to Shanghai, there's
the
6
billions.
billion people.
Yeah.
That's what the wars are over right now, is that massive, and it's almost one landmass, right? Like Turkey connects Asia to Europe. So it's almost one landmass. There's no ocean or water that separates these 6 billion people. So that's why they're here.
You know, there's so much in this. And, you know, we've now talking about globalists. So it's not only America, is it? It's China and Russia. Literally, there's a top tier, isn't there? We talk about the 1% globalists who are literally controlling everything we do. And so it was interesting. There's things I've learned there that I didn't realize. That I knew that a lot of American corporations were buying up here, but I didn't realize just how much. But I also know, which I think I've mentioned in another podcast, when I went over to Holland, that Europe bought British Rail. So we don't even own our own transport systems.
Yeah.
We don't own anything. So we've got to question why that is, why our government sold out everything, because it's all about this, isn't it? It's all about this. It's all about money.
Some of it was a good idea. Like maybe, you know, in theory, it's not such a bad idea. Bring the private sector in, you know, why not, right? But for example, 30% of ambulatory care now in Britain is run by a Danish company.
Private, yeah.
And so they will bring those interests into the NHS and, you know, ambulatory care and their values and all that. So it doesn't all have to be bad, but it requires policymakers to be alert and participatory and moral. And so the British moral line, to me, that's what we all need to work on, is making sure that there are people in decision-making seats who will advocate for the benefit of the British people, not necessarily the bottom line. Because sometimes we can use the public money. Everything doesn't have to be profitable. Sometimes you can use the private, sometimes you can use the public, but at the end of the day, every nation has to be running policies that benefit their citizenry. And that's why Trump was elected, because that's what he told them that he would do. So do we have that here? Do we have leaders here that we know will advocate for 80 million Brits? Who are they? I don't know. I don't think people think Keir is going to be that person.
No, most definitely not. And actually quite interesting on talking about our friend Keir is in the House of Parliament this week when Trump was elected, very rightly so, the opposition asked, is Keir going to apologise to Trump because Keir and the foreign minister went over to America to support Harris? As we know, and the foreign minister said some appalling, I mean, really bad stuff about Trump. So that's going to be interesting when Trump comes over here, isn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously, Keir didn't say he was going to apologise, but suddenly became very smarmy, and yes, he'd be welcomed with open arms.
Well, they have to have the diplomacy, right? That is a part of it. But there's one thing I'll say, and maybe the two of you, this is about what you're doing and your work is. I prepared some notes about the American election because that's what you mentioned to me, that now what's going to happen in the States is, you know, all of the citizens are way more involved with politics now than they were 10 years ago. It's great. Same with Canada and here. people understand, how a bill turns into a law. They understand how to get freedom of information requests. I mean, everybody's going into schools and figuring out how to lobby MPs. It's great. It's really exciting. And so that is happening all over the world, and that will happen here. And that's, to me, one of the main things that we need to, specifically women, we need to focus on at local levels, in local council levels. So I live in Wigan. It's like, I don't know what's going on in Wigan and who's running Wigan, but there's a bunch of stuff that I would like to change. So if I'm not willing to kind of get in there and go, excuse me, and be the Karen, then we'll just let whoever else wants to take that energy and run my affairs locally. And so if there's anything, we can do, it's that we can start to mobilize and get involved with local governance. Nobody can stop you doing that.
Yeah, as with everything, we talk about in the spiritual sense that everything is a lesson. So all the challenges we go through, it's a lesson. This is a huge lesson. We're being educated in a way on how we can make those things happen. We're being educated about how politics works, and I think it's something that people shy away from because it's seen as boring, and yet everything happens, it impacts every part of our lives. To not understand how it works in a fair way, which doesn't always happen, and to again question everything. If that's the way that it's meant to be, why has that not happened? So that's it.
And fairness is built into the system. Like, this is a good, fair system, mostly, not 100% because of absolute rule in the crown, but you can do a lot in a country like Britain, and you have people, the British people are very awake, and they will tell you what they think. The Canadians are too passive at the moment, right? They're like, oh, don't yell, oh, here, everybody just, the swear words everybody yells at each other on the streets, especially where I live. So I was just wondering, is that something that some of the women in your community are talking about? Because we need dynamic women starting to muscle themselves into public service. Otherwise, we're just going to be complaining 10 years from now.
Yes.
I think it's interesting that you should say that, because on my point of view, I think British people are very passive. I really do. And I think the reason why they don't get involved in politics, first, we are not taught politics in school at all, unless you take it, when you get to about 16, you might decide to take politics, but you're certainly not taught politics at all. In fact, you almost believe that you're not worthy because it's far too complicated for you. So, leave it to the people who understand. But, I know in other countries in Europe that they are taught basic politics, and to understand how the system works, because actually, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very, very simple. So for me, and certainly the way I've been brought up, is to be, you don't know anything about that. You don't know anything about that. And it's in the whole system. But obviously over the years, I've got involved. And in fact, I'm embarrassed to say this now, but no, I'm not embarrassed. It was just part of the process. But about 4 years ago, I'm very, very passionate about green issues, for example. And I was asked to stand for the Green Party for my area, not as a big role, but I did. And I really enjoyed it. And I really believed in what they were doing. And I still do, actually. And I know the local people believe in what they're doing. But since then, I have learned so much that the Green Party isn't all they say they are. So I just listened to the narrative initially, believing in just the peripheral of what was going on. But now digging deeper, I realize there's a lot more to it. So going back to what we said before, we have to really look at policies. We have to, so many people I know, oh, I don't get involved in politics. Oh, I'm not voting. Or I'm oh, I don't know enough about it. I just thought I'd have a change, and I tick that box. Honestly, Susan, this is how it is in Britain. So
no, I know. And I as an outsider, I have value, my perspective. It's not always correct, but an outsider's opinion always has value, right?
Yeah.
And I look at what's going on, and my ancestors are British. I know and have been a part of the history of this country for 200 years. But it seems like the choice is on the table for the average person or the average mom who's just got his kids and going to school run and trying to, save some money to go out for dinner or whatever, just regular people, right?
Yeah.
It seems like there's sort of two choices. You're either like a red card carrying unionist, or you're the son of somebody who went to Eton. And that's politics here. And I'm like, but that's only like 15 to 20% of the entire country.
These are the
What about the other
conversations we need to
million
introduce.
British who don't relate to either of those things?
Yeah.
These are maybe the
left out.
conversations we need to introduce, because I don't think that I think people are very disillusioned in the UK. I do feel that we can be very reserved in the way you can see things like people very outspoken, the trouble causers, if you like. But you can also see people that don't say anything and they just go through their lives and they're going through the motions and they don't want trouble because maybe they've got home stresses, maybe they've got personal things going on. And if we can, I don't know. I mean, everyone who's watching or listening, please comment below. And if you want to talk more on this subject, or if you're knowledgeable in this area, let's talk. Because if we're introducing conversations like this within our communities and in our networks, then things start to change. And that's what we're about. We're about social change.
Country is so beautiful for this. And this is why the Americans are here to invest. Okay. You got 80 million consumers on a small island. So you got to be an idiot to not make money if you can't make money in this country. Right. That's why the investors are here, because it's a huge population that loves everything and buys everything. And it's geographically, it's very small. So logistically, it's very easy to make money, as opposed to Canada. Our country is like 25 times the size of yours, and we have half the people. It's much harder to make money in Canada because you're trucking everything, and we've got 6 time zones. Right? It's ridiculous how big our country is. So using that as a metaphor in terms of profitability or business investment, it is so much easier to change the political system in a country like England because everybody is close to their neighbors. It's one time zone. Most things are run nationally. You could just drive around to all these villages and all these counties. It's really easy to create change. That's why the social change always comes out of England, because you could flip things here quickly. You got 80 million people on a small piece of land. You don't see the big changes coming from places like Canada, because like it takes us 20 minutes to drive to the neighbor's house. Do you know what I mean? So I would love to be involved or give you any ideas about.
Amazing.
We would love that.
Especially women who are over 40 or stakeholders, moms, business owners. We're on the front lines of all of the carnage of bad policy, picking up all the crap that is left by bad policy. And the women have a way of, I'm trying to do business with a couple of guys in London, and I don't know if it's going to work just because they're guys. I'm like, what are you talking about? They don't think the way we do. So count me in for anything to do with that. And there's nothing more exciting than seeing a group of British women in this country start to get politically involved, because the society and the men, they pay attention. They listen to the women here. It's very matriarchal. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of very powerful women in these communities, and they have run these communities for generation after generation.
Do you know, I will say this is absolutely refreshing, Susan, to have your outlook on our culture, if you like, because I think it's easy for us when we're living in this moment and we're doing the regular everyday things to lose sight of some of this. And when you've got someone it's so refreshing. I'm loving this conversation.
I came here to invest. I came here to make money and to start a television company. So the 25 reasons and the 5 years it's taken me to be where I am, that can for business standpoint, that transfers over to every aspect of society. Like the NHS could be overhauled in less than a year for the same reasons. There's a little NHS clinic in every community. All we got to do is go into the clinics and fix them, and we'd have it done in a year.
We need you, Susan.
Yeah,
but so while we're talking about
English, I'm English. I come from a family of troublemakers. My ancestors were very famous.
It's all coming out now.
Have you heard of the Tolpuddle murder?
I love it. You're also, you're starting. You're in the midst of it, aren't you? Of course, empowering women. Tell us a little bit about that. while we're on topic.
Okay. And I would love to introduce it to your community because I feel like almost every woman in this country needs this because I know the statistics. We're getting sicker, we're ingesting more chemicals, we're gaining more weight than we want to, and the whole aspect of our lives and our family lives are suffering because women are losing their health in this country. And so my course that I call Supermodel, which is, kind of a play on words, right? It's about getting women, particularly older women, to look in the mirror and rediscover the strength and the beauty and their power and even their purpose so they can be that better person they want. So they would go and involve themselves at the school board. So they would go out to dinner on a Friday evening and meet people and say, oh, hi, yeah, I'm running for the school board, as opposed to just sitting at home on their screens every night. The society has become very isolated. So Supermodel is about plugging, get the electricity going back into women, older women all over the country by getting them to rediscover their mojo and their uniqueness and their passions.
I absolutely love that. Sign me up. Now we have 1,400 people on our site. They're primarily women, but we have men. We try and encourage as many men as possible. And we look at holistic lifestyles, holistic health, which I'll go on to in a minute. My hero, Robert Kennedy, I'll talk about him.
You know what I was thinking, Jackie, what Susan's just been saying, you might not be that far away from meeting him, to be honest, in the future.
Well, they need a Children's Health Defence London team. That's what I heard. They have a Children's Health Defence Europe, but I don't think they've ever had a British team.
Okay.
Well, they need one, and that's what we're going to do, Susan.
There you go. Like I can hook you
up. Because this is what just a little bit about our group. We have some insanely talented women and men in our group, 1,400 people throughout the UK, but primarily it's Lancashire, Cumbria, Manchester, Liverpool, that sort of areas. But one problem I think we have, which I've identified, is that they are so good, so intelligent in what they do, but they don't have the business acronym.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is what we are trying to bring in with Root Connections. We're trying to help that, because when you go into business, most of them are sole business providers, and most of them are not driven by money. They're driven by values. But now what we're trying to do is get this abundance mindset. By the way, I'm one of those that need it. I'm totally driven by morals and value, which is all very well and good, but it doesn't put food in my mouth. Obviously, I'm not doing so bad by the looks of me, but do you know what I mean? Is that we need someone like you, Susan, who is going to bring in, how do we do it? How do we get to the top of the table, top of the food chain, with business, with what we want to do? We're so passionate.
I'll tell you what you do. This is what you do, and it's easy. You find examples, and this is any industry, any type of people you're talking about, right? This could be, hungry children who are unemployed in Africa or whatever. You find, I have a bit of a startup and tech background. So you find some examples of people who have succeeded at that. So 2 or 3 holistic practitioners who are making good money. You find the ones who are doing this, right? And then we study, okay, what are they doing? What are they doing differently than a person that has a holistic, small practice or whatever you call it, who is not able to cross that line financially? And that's all it is. You study the ones who are succeeding, and whatever they are doing, the people who are not succeeding financially, they just need to copy it. That's all it is. And usually it's around habit, daily habits, and prioritizing. And any kind of success coaching has this kinds of theory, follow the best, study the best, copy what works. Don't hang around. If you want to make more money, hang around with people who are earning more money, because it will rub off on you. So you may know right now, are there a couple examples of people in the 1,400 network who are doing very well financially? that you could
Yeah.
tap into. Okay, what are they doing? They need to teach everybody else what they're doing.
Yeah. I think, but yeah, we need to get that. We need to get that across. And I'm massively, we work on the 3 C's, and that is collaboration, connection, and community. So these are our passions. And to bring this high vibration through bad situations that we've seen over the last few years, it's been difficult. There's a lot of spiritual people, include Paula and I, and that we're highly spiritual, and we work on energy. So that we believe that money is energy also, and so it's just an exchange
And
of
money is
energy.
infinite. Most
Yes.
people don't understand that. It's not like
Yeah.
land. Land is finite. There's only so much land on the earth, right? Unless we go to
Yeah.
planet. But money isn't infinite. It is infinite. Sorry, it's not finite. And most people haven't plugged into that idea that money doesn't it's not, if you don't have money in your life, it's not because there is a lack of money in the world, because the banks are full of it. I mean, God, they just photocopy it. They just make it up anyway, right? Like money.
Yeah. It's not even real.
Buttons on a computer and put it in your bank account,
So it's infinite. It's accessible to all, right? It's very democratic. Money goes to everybody. Money goes to the poor. Money goes to the rich. It's not a barrier. It's not something that has barriers. So I would say empaths, I guess that's maybe the right word, empaths, spiritual practitioners.
Yeah.
They maybe also tell themselves a story that, well, I've chosen that money's not important. It's not as important to other things.
Yes.
That's a lie, because they are experts in abundance. They are experts in what is possible. And so if anybody should be able to become wealthy,
I'm totally on board with that. And I think that's where our blocks lie. I think it's our internal dialogue that tells us, or some of the ways that we view money. And I think it's something we've talked about before many times, Jackie, and we've done like unblocking around money, and I've done sessions with clients. Now I need to tell you something, ladies. I manifested £900 yesterday.
How? That's fantastic.
And I just knew that it was, I've got a project that I'm working on, and I'm making it happen. And I just knew that it was going to come. And so for the past week or so, I've just told myself every single night certain affirmations, and I've told myself it's here, it's ready, and I received it yesterday. And this is something that can be hit on. I've got to be careful with the way I say this. In the past, it's been hit or miss.
Yeah.
I'm hitting each time now, and that's because I think I've been listening to those people that are making the money. I've been working and tuning into those coaches and those holistic practitioners that are starting, that are where I would like to be in a financial sense. And I've been listening to how they talk about money. Yeah. And I've been implementing what they say to themselves.
Well, and if you think about the word health, I mean, isn't it bizarre? I've thought about this for 4 years because I sold t-shirts under a brand, Health Justice. That's what I became known for in Canada. And then I ran a program called Wealth Justice. It's like, it's the funniest thing. There's very few words like this. They are exactly the same spelling except the first letter. So they are connected.
Ah, yes.
And health is the greatest wealth.
Yes, that's how to change the narrative, isn't it?
So I think that's something your group, I mean, you got 1,400 of you, and you started workshopping some of this stuff around thinking and mindset and limiting beliefs. So the whole group could transform.
Yeah. And I mean, it does happen. It starts to trickle down. I think we want to give that on a mass scale, and we've got to figure out strategy around how to do that. But I think that's coming together. I mean, I think
definitely
exciting
100%. But that's something we can talk about. We certainly will have you on again, Susan. I'm talking about that topic, and people have been totally, and I'm not talking about our group now, the holistic world. We know about good health, we know about what we should be doing, and are doing it. However, we're talking about the vast majority of people in the UK, well, all over the world, with the exception of probably third world countries, that I'm talking about the Western world here, is the food that is going into our supermarkets is just awful. And so it has been, and people are beginning to be aware of it, and that's what we're about, is showcasing, in this country it was like, oh yeah, you have cereal in the morning, muesli and all this, but now they're looking at the back of packets and going, oh my goodness, do you know how much sugar is in the cereal? Or we're giving it our children?
Yeah.
So this is the great
you have better product laws here. Your food is cleaner here, definitely, than in the States. And again, this goes back to the money, like the broken health, the lack of health, the health descending, getting less and less in the past 20 years, say, is a massive business opportunity. Like somebody's going to come in, and that's what Bobby Kennedy, I think, is going to inspire with, is make America healthy again. That doesn't have to just be in government. That could be a whole private sector small business initiative for the next 4 years too. If I live in a really this town in terms of its food, and
pies. Wigan's famous for pies.
Organic grocery store. Like, it would do really well in my community, and there's lots of empty businesses. So it's about finding those people that really, I guess, are the leaders, right?
Yeah, and it's going to happen. I'm absolutely certain of it. Now, because of Robert Kennedy, I'm hoping he'll be, head of health. I'm pretty sure he will be in America, and that will just come over here as well. And I think holistics is very much in that. It certainly isn't on the top of the agenda over here, although we talk about it. Of course, we've got the NHS here, which is a good thing in one way, but isn't in another, because holistics have just been put on the side and they've totally focused on pharmaceutical, and giving out drugs, which this is something I'm very, very passionate about.
It's growing.
It's got to change.
She's on tablets.
Yeah, and we're talking about kids here. I was only talking to someone this week, and sadly his daughter, you tried to take her own life. It's a serious topic, and this is happening a lot to kids, and a lot of kids are on antidepressants. What is that all about? And it's got to stop.
America is the biggest pharmaceutical user, right? They consume like 40% of all pharmaceutical drugs in the world, in the entire world. They maybe even at 60. And they're allowed to broadcast drug ads into Canada because of our connections, telecommunications wise. Those are the only two countries where you can see drug ads. And I'm sure they're working on it here. They're trying to get it. The pharmaceutical industry, just like I told you about why England or Britain, is a target for so much investment. The drug companies know that too. It's really money in a country like England, because of the density of the population, and everything is done federally. So in Canada, our drugs the sales slow down because we have provincial jurisdiction around health and not federal. So they have to do business with 11 governments in Canada, and that slows their profit down. Whereas they only have to do business with Keir Starmer here.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And that is where we come into, because I will not allow, like it's all in my control. It's not. But when we work as a collective, we can get more education again out there. We can teach people tools as to how you can avoid medication. I've been medicated most of my life for depression and anxiety. And 3 years ago, I decided enough was enough, because I didn't feel anything. I was so detached from my emotions. And 3 years ago, I made a decision that no. And when I introduced alternative ways of living and ways of looking after my mental health, I never needed to go back to anything. I am me, and the tools that I have that I use work every single time. And this is the kind of thing that we need to push out there and make,
which we are, aren't we? And but we need that backing of our government to get it into all the clinics. So just that it's a choice, because there isn't a choice at the moment, because people think, oh, well, it costs money, which it does. You know, NHS is free. Of course, it's not free, but they think of it as free.
And I would say something contrary to that is that my personal opinion, I'm not saying this is what you should think, but going the government route is the slowest.
Yes.
Right. Like what we really need to do is have organic grocery stores in every community. Those are pharmacies. Right. So all you got to do is rent a store, get a couple business partners, set up a membership, say, get a couple hundred people to pay a membership annually, and you have a pharmacy, you have a solution set up. The government thing, oh my God, the red tape, the regulation, and they're already, I believe this, they're already mostly bought and paid by pharma. The government will not risk that money. Like I met this woman in London. She's an American. She's over here consulting for the NHS. I'm like, what are you doing here? What, the Brits can't finish it themselves? They've already got them in the web of control. And so I always encourage people, especially women and moms, whatever you do, don't try and do it with the government. Do it, use the private sector, because there's so much less constraints. There's so many fewer ways that you can be stopped.
I'm seeing a lot of organic shops popping up everywhere, you know. I am seeing that change. And I think the tide is changing. I think we give that kind of that link to those shops and those people that are doing those things. We kind of give that direction, and we're that missing link, because people want to do these things. They just don't know where to go. And that's
well, your group could do this, right? You've got 14 pods, or 13 or 15 groups, right?
We've got less now, but
or 10, say you got 10.
But you know, the whole point of this is to, you know, create education and to be that link for people to understand. And it is working, and I can see now, gosh, 2025 is just going to fly.
Well, the reason why I wanted to mention the number is, if you chose this, I'm not saying you do this, but you could, if Root Connection really decided to go private sector, you could open up 10 small organic grocery stores in the next 3 to 6 months, and Root Connections could actually become a retail health food brand.
That's really interesting concept.
That's the hugeness.
Why not?
Right now,
you know, anybody listening out there, you know, if you're going to, but and you know, there's something else we're passionate about. We're going off topic a little bit, but you know, obviously farming is suffering over here massively, and I'm from a farming family. I'm a farmer's daughter, so I'm really passionate about this. You know, they're just squashing the smaller farms, they're squashing them, and which they've done over the seas anyway, haven't they, in America
and Canada? They did it.
And Canada, and factory farms. Of course, we've got to stop that, and we've got to help the small farms. We've got to help them by basically cutting out Tesco's. Let's cut them out, and any other big supermarket in any way we can, and so you get your food fresh from the farms. You know, but that's there's so much we could talk about here, isn't there? So much.
And that's where a retail concept could work, because we could I could just walk into Root Connections and spend my £100 solving the farmer problem. But I've tried like 2 green box delivery groups around me. Neither of them have gotten back to me. It's not easy. So I keep bloody going to Tesco. Stuff. And most people are in that. They're ready to change things with their money. But if people like us haven't built the new systems, everyone is forced to use the old system still.
Well, just to add to that then, I mean, if we're struggling to get a hold of this fresh produce, anyone that's watching, in the comments below, please share with us anyone in your local area that has a health food store or any of the delivery boxes that we're talking about, that's a small local business in your area. Let's work together on this for the moment before we open our Root Connections shops, whether that happens or not. It's a beautiful idea. I love it.
It's a good brand.
In the meantime, let's help each other now and share those links below. So if you know of anyone that has somewhere that we can go to order things like that, please share it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's getting a healthier communities already. I mean, I've been big on foraging this year. It's my new thing. And, everything this week I've been making pumpkin soup. I mean, it's probably a big thing over in Canada, but we used to use turnips when I was a kid. We didn't have pumpkin
Yeah.
lanterns. But of course, it's pumpkin lantern. I bought one, even though my son's 21, he's in Holland. He's not interested, but I wanted to cut one up. Didn't get around to it. It was still on my table. I thought, I'm going to make a soup out of this. It took me an hour to cut it up. It was so
It's a big deal.
yeah, it's a big deal. But I've got enough soup to last me a month.
Yeah.
So, but this is the sort of things, but it's absolutely delicious. But I'm only saying that is there's so much people don't do anymore because they think they don't have time. But as I was doing it, I put some really nice, I put classical music on that I don't normally, well, I do listen to it sometimes, but gosh, I was meditating while doing it. And I thought, people should be doing this with the families, and they don't cook with the family. And that is something really important that I want to get across as well. And this is all stuff that we can get going and educate people. And I hope people who are listening, really grasp that is that having family time.
A bit of a toolkit, you got to give them a bit of an instruction book. Like 90% of the people will pick it up and go, okay, I'll try this. But if somebody doesn't lay out the roadmap of how to do it, and that's where the role of the leaders come in, right? To teach other people how to do that. That's how great movements are built.
Yes, absolutely. And just sending a PDF is not it, isn't it? It has to be a bit more than that. But interestingly, just moving on, plugging what I'm doing this week. So through all that, I've been doing a detox this week because it's highly needed. I used to do one every 3 months, a week's detox, and it really, really works. It's not for dieting. It was, for health reasons. And, there's lots of cultures that prove this. It's so good. Yeah. And so I've been doing it this week. I feel absolutely brilliant. My energy's gone through the roof. And so I'm going to deliver a detox program starting on Monday online. And it's very, very simple. So, anybody else wanting to join, just look on Root Connections or my Facebook page, Jacqueline Robinson. It's what we can do. Let's get it going. And the whole idea of me doing that, I'm doing it free, by the way, is that.
There you go. How come you're not charging for it?
I know. But I just want to teach people that it's simple, not overcomplicated. We don't have to overcomplicate life. This is my key thing: simplicity. Absolutely bring it down to 5 simple things, really. I just wanted to mention that because it's quite important.
And for the connection between like empowering people, this is what I focus on, is the thing that everybody can do is get healthier. You can start today. You can go for a walk. You can have a cup of tea. There's no barrier. You don't have to spend any money. Everybody can get a little more fit and a little healthier today, tomorrow. And when people focus on that, then they, as you talked about with the detox, then they're much more able to think clearly and soundly about how they could affect larger change in their community. But if a person is sick and unhealthy and depressed and lying in the bed and feeling dismal, they're never going to be a force of any form of change. So we have to get people healthy first, and particularly women, and moms. That mom will transform the life of probably 7 people in her immediate family. That's why I always focus on moms.
It brings that clarity to your mind when you're feeling healthier and you're feeling cleansed. You've got that clarity, and you can
motivated
and interact with the community. That's a huge thing we need to focus on, because we're all living such isolated lives. And England's great for that. England likes to speak to each other. The Brits, they chat on the street, right? And just to bring that back more, to get out and interact. I would love to do something with churches, because they're all sitting with amazing kitchens that are mostly unused. And that's a great way to gather people. What do we have in our immediate communities as resources that are not being used? What
Yeah.
are they? And how can we start?
Community centres,
Yeah.
village halls. They're being used a lot more in the rural areas, certainly around my way. I live in a rural village. They are being used a lot more. They're doing a lot more local plays and things like that, getting communities together. So, when we think about the last 4 years, I think in another 4 years, I'm going to think of it as a really good thing. I mean, I already am. I understand that you have to go to a dark place before you get to the really fabulous place. And so, on this note, isn't it amazing that the things are changing that couldn't have changed if we hadn't gone through all of that?
Well, and that was the silver lining of COVID, right? I was
Yeah.
like, thank God this happened, because a lot of us were just walking around feeling subconsciously disengaged because we're like disappointed in the world. And I was really grateful my kids are the age they are, because they're growing up now seeing the change. I've got friends whose kids were already like 18, 19, and 20, and they
Right.
couldn't stop them from falling into this globalist stuff and the vaccines and everything. And
Yeah.
like you said, just being so grateful that this is actually happening. And it's always the hard times where the strongest leaders emerge.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, through war and in my, I've always
Anything,
said
because
it's a
they're the most
spiritual war.
resilient. They're the hardest fighters, and we've got to like figure out where they are in all the communities and give them the tools they need to help others.
Yeah,
I love that.
absolutely. And the resilience that we've learned. I've never felt stronger or more resilient in my entire
Cool.
life. You
Well,
can't
I'm so
touch
grateful
me.
that you
That's what I keep
invited
thinking.
me on today. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much. We've just talked about quite a few things there that we weren't expecting. That's how it always is, isn't it?
I love it.
Me too.
And I can't wait to have you on again, Susan, because the knowledge that you have and the passion shines through. I've absolutely loved our chat today. Thank you so much.
Well, you're
Yeah.
very welcome. And that's what I was saying about the value of an outsider, the same way a Brit over in Canada or America, right? I wanted to say just a couple things about the American election, because you
Yeah.
mentioned that.
Yeah, please
I
do.
think key things to look for are the cabinet appointments. Who is Donald Trump actually going to be putting in, and what's their track record? Figuring out, this whole set of people that will still try to take him down before January, or will still try and run like horrible psyops over the next 4 years.
Yeah.
That's not going to go away, right?
No.
And then finally, I think that, like I said here, it's going to be a great time to see in the United States more candidates feeling inspired, or potential candidates feeling inspired by Trump, who are going to decide, hey, he's made running for office cool. He's made politics cool again. How many people are going to decide to go for a school board or a state legislature or the Congress or some sort of public service?
Yeah.
It's cool again to be involved in how we govern ourselves. So those are the things that I'm looking for in the next 6 months, is these key people and what will be the strategy of the deep state to try and stop, like the fact that Kamala didn't say a concession speech, to me was evidence that they're planning something.
Has she still not?
No, not in the way they normally do. And they let them have the election. It was too easy almost. And a lot of us are thinking, they must think that they're going to win in a different way. And I would think an assassination is probably on the table, or some sort of major psyop, because they're not just going to let go. There's no way.
No, that was a bit.
No.
Yeah.
They're far too powerful, aren't they? But I am so in great belief that not just Trump, is it? The whole collective is going to forge forward. I think they have thought about it. They must know this. I have heard that the military are protecting both Trump and Kennedy, and probably others. Not that that's rock solid, but of course I believe that they would try it. But I think we also have to understand, which we haven't really touched on, but that there is lots of things that are going to come out in the next year, i.e. Epstein list. that everyone keeps talking about. It's not politics, but that's what people are interested in. And there's going to be names on that list that are going to shock people.
January 6th will be a big thing. The information he reveals about how they actually stole the 2020 election. The Epstein thing for me is like, okay, whatever. It's all the bad people, engaged in all this ludicrous activity. But I want to know, how did they actually, like hundreds or thousands of people must have been involved with stealing the election in 2020.
Yes. And he'll be gunning for them. And I imagine right now there's a lot of people a little bit fearful.
Yeah.
I heard that the CEOs of all the pharmaceutical companies had a urgent meeting the very next day, because they know that they will be gunning for them, and I hope they do. But it's a long process, isn't it? It's not going to be like overnight, all these things, but bit by bit, 2025 is certainly going to be one of the most interesting years, that has been seen in maybe 100 years.
It's an interesting time to be alive. And if at the moment you're thinking, oh my God, how will I get through whatever's to come?
Yeah,
you will, because there are people like us that are more than willing to help you through these times. And try and have a little bit of detachment from it. Look at your immediate vicinity and your loved ones and what you can do in your home and with your family if things get too much, and turn the bloody TV off. Turn that TV off.
Yeah, and
organize the world a good.
Organize discussions and people getting together. Yes. Well, on that note, is it okay if we finish up? Because I'm actually going to get to the gym. I'm going swimming today, and my husband has graciously offered to drive me, so I've got to get off the computer.
Gotta go. Okay.
Gotta go.
Thank you so much, ladies. I'll end it here. Please share our channel. Please comment below if you've got anything that you'd like to add. Thank you, ladies, for being here. It's been so amazing.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank
Until next week.
Again.
Thanks, Susan. Enjoy the gym. Bye, folks. Bye.
Bye.